Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah.
luckily,
That's
I
right.
ended up
That's right.
signing
Now it's like, that's the only
to
way
be
I
able to
can.
get into last fall. So I kind of have the ability to
Oh, yeah.
create confidence. I'm guessing that these students get down as my brothers out west.
No, but I
Then she was like, I will just keep it out.
Like last reset between.
The other menu, trailer.
This one,
So you can.
I look at my call this
Everybody, we'll go ahead and come to order. 7:37. Welcome back to this semester, everyone. First meeting of a new decade, I guess, which is kind of crazy to think about. About that. Putting everything together today. Hope everybody enjoyed their break, had a good break, and is ready to come at things this spring again. It's kind of crazy to think that we haven't had a meeting for 2 months, but that is the case, with our last one having been in November on the 19th. So a lot of catching up as far as information, as far as the events board and various searches. And so I tried to put that material in the report that I have for you this evening. And I know that Diana and Lindy both have reports on other areas as well to just get everybody caught up to speed. We got, as usual, agendas in the back next to the sign-in sheet, which is also on that table. A number of different one sheets for various announcements, pieces of information, as well as some that were in the email that weren't necessarily printed out for tonight. If you have any question about any of those, just holler, and we'll make sure we get it figured out. And then, of course, the food over there on the table as well. If there is nothing prior to the next item on the agenda, I would ask for a motion to adopt the agenda and approval of the previous minutes on YouTube.
Motion to adopt.
Second?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Seeing none opposed, motion passes. Thank you much, everyone. So first item we got after the approval of the agenda is speakers from the floor. We'll recognize anyone that has anything that they wish to address the council with for a period of time, if you so wish. You can use this to bring up any kind of business or any questions or concerns, or make any announcements that you feel are important for everyone to know at the beginning of the meeting. We also have some time at the end of the meeting for announcements. Due to the order. There is no request for time at the end of the meeting. I'll be happy to move on to the next item. Any opposed? All right, I'll move us along to old business. So the first bit of old business is following up on the search for the provost and vice chancellor for academic affairs. GPSC had taken a number of actions and held quite a lot of deliberation during our council in the fall on the search that had been ongoing. I shared in the meeting reminder email that went out the memorandum that followed our last deliberation on November 19th that I communicated to the chancellor and the office of the chancellor, along with our resolution to postpone that search. And then I also shared the memorandum that I communicated to the system president office, as well as the chair of the board of trustees prior to their board meeting that was December 4th and 5th. And I also attached a statement that I provided to the board and the system officers on the December 4th executive session. There was no time for me to speak in the full regular board meeting on the 5th, so I made that statement during the 4th. The conclusion, by and large, was we didn't really receive a response from the office of the chancellor following our November 22nd memorandum. I did receive not a formal response, but just an informal sort of, hey, so we got that memorandum, the system office. It was communicated to me from the administrator, from the system officers, that would be communicated with everybody. Chair Gilbert did let me know that they've gotten that they talked about it. I had a couple other trustees come up to me in the course of the meeting and said that, they appreciated the letter. And the comments were what they were as far as the public comments go. In the course of the board meeting, there were a number of other speakers, mostly within the December 5th meeting, not so much during the executive session. But number of speakers. Ultimately, the board did approve the resolution or the agenda item for the board to complete and make the appointment of Dr. Komaraju for the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs and Provost position. And so, with that summary, I'll take any questions as to where we are on that bit of business. Provide any more detail if there is any. If there's no further questions, comments, requests for that bit of business, I'll consider that sort of closed and remove that from the agenda going forward. Seeing no objections to that, kind of have taken that to its conclusion. Following up on another bit of old business, we passed a motion, I believe that was also in the 19th meeting, for the creation of a process that would at least articulate a format, if not actually the mechanisms for convening an inter-constituency shared governance conference. Our deliberation discussion about the search for a provost, vice chancellor for academic affairs, more or less brought up the question, if you remember on the 19th, the idea of, well, if we were to make a resolution requesting that the search be postponed and a decision not be made, or anything more or less in that kind of a position on the ongoing search and the intended decision that was going to be made by the board, the idea of like whether or not that mattered, how much it would actually influence the outcome, whether we'd be actually doing ourselves a disservice by taking a position we already can kind of see that isn't going to be the one that is consistent with the board's decision making or the board's judgment. And so as a part of that, one of the ideas that I had to recommend or at least bring up to the council was this idea of, at the end of the day, pretty much every party that was frustrated with how that search was going for any number of reasons, which there are many reasons that weren't necessarily everyone shared, or at least everyone could sort of understand if they didn't necessarily share them, from different parties and different constituencies, whether it's faculty, whether it's students, whether it's union representation. At the core of that, more or less, everyone's key complaint was the idea of feeling as though their role, their input, and their influence within the shared governance process wasn't necessarily holding as much weight as expectation would otherwise have for their role in that shared governance process. And so I raised the idea of potentially we can actually reach out and engage with all of these parties, or rather all of these parties come together and engage with one another in some kind of discussion or declaration as to what it is those shared understanding or expectations or desires are for shared governance. And so we passed a motion for our executive to go through the process of creating something that would at least outline a format or the mechanism for doing some action to that effect. Where I am with that is I think what I would like to do is bring a resolution to our council for the council to consider. In that resolution, I would more or less resolve for us to approve of a number of representatives. I think no more than 2 is good, but perhaps even just 1 is okay. But 1 or 2 representatives would probably be my sweet spot idea of resolving to send 1 or 2 representatives to a collection of 1 or 2 representatives from these other key constituencies provide for the opportunity for other constituencies to petition for a representative, so long as those core ones actually accept that petition. So in the sense of our core constituencies being faculty senate, graduate council, graduate professional student council, undergraduate student government, civil service council, the administrative professional staff council, those being the core constituencies. Then we have the 3 labor unions that represent various workers on campus, but then we also have a lot of different other constituency groups that have their own sort of autonomous functioning. So one that we work a lot with is the International Student Council, which isn't necessarily recognized as an actual constituency in the governance of the university, but does do a lot of things. So the idea that they would be able to request from those core the unions and then all the official constituencies for policy to ask, hey, can we also send someone to engage in this process? So in that resolution, it would outline that, and more or less it would be up to then our representative, as well as with some help, I'm sure, from our executive, to reach out to those other bodies to essentially pass that same resolution, but in their own bodies, so that they also have the authority to send that representative, and then those representatives just get together to decide on how they see best to go about having all of those representatives of those constituencies create some kind of discussion or articulation or declaration or request for shared governance, more or less leading the actual objective or the outcome of that process up to the person that actually gets sent there. My thinking in that is that that limits the amount of influence we have on what the outcome of this process would actually look like, which I think is probably pretty realistic. We should have tried to set the expectation of what the outcome of it might be. Insofar, that's a pretty diverse set of constituencies, and ours doesn't necessarily include all of those different aspects of what the desires for the outcome would be. So, I'm open to thoughts on that. Like I said, the resolution itself would be something that we'd present at our February 4th meeting, so a couple of weeks from today. That's something we could pass on one reading. That's not a constitutional or a bylaw amendment, so we don't require 2 readings on that. Something we can procedurally do in one. But in general, that's where that piece of old business is. That's my thinking. I'll probably run a draft by our executive committee on what that would look like, with some of their help in authoring that final format of the resolution with this language. Open to any suggestions from the council members itself, any participation you want, but thought I'd run that up to see if there was any initial thoughts or reaction, issues, seeing that.
Have we contacted any of the other governing bodies with the idea of this resolution? Or would we be like making the resolution, selecting 2 people, and then contacting the other bodies?
It was more of the latter than the former. Like I've mentioned it in passing to just a couple of representatives, but nothing near as comprehensive. So the majority of them don't know of this, and then yeah, we would say, hey, we've done this. If this is something you're interested in. And my thinking in that, apart from the break, somewhat getting in the way of doing that kind of groundwork. We didn't really have a format figured out for it, and I don't want to bring up an idea and then either run away beyond what it was or completely different from what we were wanting in the first place, or for us to bring it up without sort of a real firm idea of what we're doing. So it's difficult to agree something we have no idea.
Yeah, I would throw in that suggestion that at this preliminary stage, that it's about the formation and what that might look like and be modeled as. Because if it's dealing with shared governance, we don't want to overcover what this new kind of interconstituent group will look like and the processes. That should be a shared dialogue as far as what it will be and become.
The last bit that I had on that then is Something that we can consider then is if there's any individual or you know someone that would be interested in being the one or one of the two or however many we ultimately settle on how many representatives we would say that a constituency can send for this process. If there's anyone that's interested, you know someone that would be interested in doing that, reach out. I think that it would be ideal to pass a resolution approving that as a process and then right thereafter, basically pass a motion for the actual appointment of someone who's been nominated to be that representative and or representatives for the process. So if anybody's interested, let us know at any time in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be happy to entertain that as a motion for an ultimate appointment of the representatives. Are there any further questions, discussion on this? All right, seeing none, I'll have us move on to, where are we, 7:52 and new business. All right, new business was the allocation board, but we don't have any bills tonight, right?
We do not have any bills tonight. For anybody, I did want to say though that I did receive 6 applications. But there was some confusion with that, and so I did request that they meet with us at our followers meeting, and that some of that confusion, it's dealing with the upcoming international festival. So if you know anybody from those organizations, let them know that it was pending hearing back from the president of the International Student Council on best ways to move forward so that we can look at potential additional support for that event and for activities in the spring, even though we gave them monies in the fall that was supposed to go towards all their overall annual events and things like that. Just know that they will be contacted now that those meetings and that dialogue is happening. And then I can move on to the next item. Don't have any other bills for tonight. So one thing that the allocation board also oversees is our GPSC annual awards. If you have questions about these annual awards, you will notice in the back table there was the agenda as well as with the handouts for this evening with the upcoming diversity and inclusivity programming. But there are also one sheets that kind of describe in more fuller detail what these awards look like and some, how you apply for them and whatnot. So the first that we do is the research award. And what I'm really asking for you is I'm going to kind of explain a little bit of what that is. That I also more importantly am looking for those who might want to serve on that committee. And it's really fun I'll have those who are in the room that have served in the past going to talk about the experience, which you can expect. But what we do is that is going to be opening up and available for people to submit beginning in early March. And then we're going to have that continue to open through the earlier portion of April. And then those winners and those who are selected will be announced briefly at our at the SCARF, we're calling the SCARF, which is the Student Creative Research and activities, creative activities and research forum. That's what I was forgetting, forum. Yes, somebody now just call that SCARF, and because it's easier to say. And so that is something that also is, of course, is done with the research in mind, both for our undergraduate and graduate students. And then we also give them wonderful attention at our end of the year annual award ceremony. But we accept research from everyone. So if you are committed to research, we've had applicants in the past because we as GPSC serve not only our graduate students, but also our professional students. So that includes our law students as well as our medical students. So I've definitely received applications from our medical school as well in the past. In the past, we have reached almost upwards to nearly 100 applications during that open window of time. But in the past, we've also given anywhere from 5 to 8 awards. Our awards can range, depending on what we have in our budget, to upwards to $1,000, $1,500, and less. So there are some that only ask for $300 or only ask for $500. So it just depends on what the needs of the applicant is. But we do have a max amount that we can potentially give. The awards, just so you know, if you are interested in applying, it should be towards, you shouldn't be all completed and now you're about to graduate. It's going to be helping, and I don't mind looking at that and reviewing that, so do know that it's more competitive if it's something that this money will help you graduate, if that makes sense. Like, having this money is critical for you to do your research and to graduate. So if you've already proven that you've accomplished that, then it does kind of weaken your chances. Although you might make that great defense, that you are still really hard up on cash and that money would still help you as you transition into your professional career. So it's not that you can't apply, but just know. For those who participated in that, what we do is it's done in a way, so if we have 100 applicants, in the past we might have 10 volunteers that are serving to review these applicants, and so you be paired into a team. That team will then review or 20 of those applicants, and then they go to the roundtable of all 10 volunteers to be reviewed. And it's kind of brackets, so then it moves up, and then the top people then are reviewed by the full 10, and then those top people are then reviewed for our final selection. So if you've done this before, or if you've served on this committee, raise your hand. Nicholas, have you served on it? Right. Ben, have you served on it before? Not yet. I know Emily served on it. But how many of you thought this was a pretty cool process? Thought it was pretty neat? Thought it was pretty awesome? And so if you'd like to do it, if you'd like to serve on this, know that we will probably be meeting on the weekend before the SCARF event, which is April 21st, and or the weekend before that. So that would leave the 18th and 19th, I believe, or the 12th and the 13th. So we usually do it on a Sunday or a Saturday. We just take the morning, we have an opportunity to look through this. I bring in breakfast food, we listen to music, and we talk about this research. So if you are, I do usually try to have at least 8 to 10 people, including myself, so that we have a diversity of people looking for this very diverse submission of research. So if you are interested, yes.
Based on need, or is it based on like which research is most compelling? Or
It's a combination of everything. So so it's based on I mean, overall we do have a matrix system, so we do kind of have like a scoring grid that kind of gives us at least a foundation. But sometimes somebody's application is just outstanding because of because of what their research will do towards their field of study. It might be groundbreaking research. You have some that you can tell that it will that there is a need, but not only a need financially, but a need for that within their own field, a need for that on a community base, on a national base, on a worldly base, that this research just simply needs to be done. So it all kind of comes in there, but it's very diverse. We have people we aren't narrow-minded. If someone is submitting something from the sciences versus the arts, we are certainly open-minded to the different languages that might exist surrounding that research. So it's not limiting to any sort of people from various backgrounds. So if you are interested in that, please see me afterwards, or keep on thinking about it, review your schedule, and send me an email individually, or you can send an email to gpsc@sau.edu, and I can give you more details about, and that way I also will know what people's schedules are, so I can finalize that date and when we will be meeting, and also know when we have rooms available to meet to review that. In addition to that, we also last year added a new category, our Outstanding Graduate Teaching Award. So how many of you are graduate teaching assistants in this room, or have colleagues that are GTAs? You are all compelled to both apply and also to serve on this review committee. It is one of those two where it is a combination. We understand that it is hard to sometimes understand without being a student in that classroom what that teacher does every day. So to understand that, what we've asked for is letters from both the students and from other outside members. So if there's a faculty member that can also attest to the ability of this graduate teaching assistant. But really, we want to hear from the voices of the students that are taking classes with these individuals. So you have to be, it's required that you are nominated by a student. And that then you will have also your teaching philosophy written, as well as your quantitative feedback. That way, it's not just one student's voice, but all the voices of all the students you've had in your course evaluations that also speak to that narrative of what you're trying to display in the submission that you're creating. That is fairly new. We're hoping to expand that with more applications, and also look at opportunities to also grant more potential financial awards to align with that. But I tell you, that is something that looks fantastic on a CV. As you move forward in a career, trying to become a teacher in a teaching facility or a school that is focused on teaching, being nominated as one of the top teachers, especially from your students, is certainly something that is very competitive. And then finally, something that is, and Clay can also speak to this, we have the GPSC Distinguished and Outstanding Service Award. So many people in this room have done things to serve their communities as graduate and professional students. So think about what you have done this past academic year, or during your time as a college student here at SIU, both here on this campus and in the greater community. community. I think of wonderful people in this room that certainly would be wonderful applicants for this award. But this is a little different. The other two awards are online submissions, and so there will be a platform and email that goes out that can access those submissions, links to our website, from our website, and all the forms, and just turn in everything that way. This is going to be nomination based. So we then, as an executive board, will review your nominations and then decide collectively who we feel has provided service from various categories, whether you are a student, a teacher, a staff member, a community member. So you don't have to be a student to win this award. Just someone who has advanced opportunities for graduate and professional students through their acts of service during this past academic year. Once again, I know it's a lot at once. We do have handouts in the back that kind of give a little bit more detail. And just know that the timeline for this and these selections will be happening in April. And these all then are honored and recognized at our end of the year award ceremony. Jim?
For the research one, I have two questions.
Sure.
One, can the award go towards finding software?
Yes.
Research?
Yeah. So people are we ask that you have an itemized list of what the money potentially directly goes to. For example, there was a woman that was looking at, hers was archaeology, but she was not looking to, there's so much archaeology that looks at the pharaohs and those who would be considered the upper class of the Egyptian pharaohs, right? But she wanted to know how the common person was buried, because burial rituals of the everyday person during that time period. So she had to fly to, obviously, Egypt to do the excavation and to understand and to be part of that. It was already in motion, but she needed the ticket just to get there. The rest was going to be paid for. And she literally showed us what the flight estimates would be and all that stuff. So we arranged from flights, hotel costs if you're doing in-person interviews, to you need a special magnet that can only be purchased or whatever it might be, or you need something to keep your specimens in, beakers, it all ranges. Because we know research costs money.
I think we don't pay for software last year.
We did help software, the survey one, yeah, we did help for software.
And then second for that, it said it won't pay for travel to present the research, but what about something like?
So what I'm saying is that if it's travel to do the research, you have to fly to Egypt to actually do. What you're not going to pay for is you go to NCA or your convention later on, because that's presentation of research that actually gets research completed.
Okay.
Because we have other channels of funding across the campus that help you present research. So both through GPSC and our travel funding, the graduate school, and usually in your department in college or at your school. So those are two separate entities. Any other questions about that? And I'm happy to answer any questions if you're like, I really care about my research. And even if you have questions about what can I do to make my application more competitive in any of these categories, that's your privilege of being a representative in this room. Is what's the winning strategy? I think that's very healthy to ask, right? So what do you look for? What has been things that are the expectation, the quality of work that are as far as the language of the application, and I'm more than happy to also answer those for you without saying I'm just going to pick you, but I'm going to make sure that you have a quality submission.
What I was going to offer on that is that we will have additional information coming as a follow-up when we have the specific dates for when the submission portal opens and for basically when the end of applications and all of that. So we'll have another promotion thing. But we thought getting the word out there to make sure that everybody's on everyone's minds. Definitely a big item of what we do. These awards, and also anybody that's interested in participating in the committees that review materials.
And one question I'm surprised that didn't come up that I get every year is, can you submit and still be on the committee? I do see that as a potential conflict of interest, but I think that you can get to the top tier and then they ask them in the room. If that makes sense, because the way the bracket works for the research, for anybody who's ever participated in the research award, we can certainly review yours, but know that we will review it objectively. And we will be more than happy to tell you how, and you would probably be in the room and be like, oh yeah, this is amazing research. It would be hard to compete against this. But you're certainly more than welcome to serve on both capacities, to submit and serve. It's not impossible to do both. But there would be parameters that at what point you would be asked to be in the room.
Yeah, that was in the email, is the like RTS awards one sheets. It was combined, all three into one file, and I think we got a few printed out ones of each sheet that's over there on the table. But yeah, take a look over those sheets and you'll see more information coming down the pipe as we open up the portal and announce what the cutoff dates for your applications are. And like we said, these are awards that we recognize individuals at our end of the year ceremony, meeting, last meeting of the year type thing, where we sort of put on a big plot, recognize those great accomplishments of the individuals that are being recognized and awarded. It's all really awesome. So, any more questions with this, or we can go on to other business? Seeing none? Okay. Cool. So, new business. No, not new business, sorry. Officer reports.
Yep.
Yeah.
So my computer is in the shop, so I'm going based off of what I vaguely remember for announcements. So if I miss something, especially grad council, please help me. So there was a grad council meeting near the end of the semester, but I would say there wasn't a lot gone over. I'm sure there'll be more upcoming this semester. At the end of the semester, there was also 2 meetings. Emergency meetings called by the grad school about the decline in graduate level applications for admissions. They're interesting meetings. I would say that for the most part, and by interesting I am sarcastic, then yeah. I would say for the most part it felt like maybe like a faculty listening session. And I do think that that information will be taken to probably the provost, and then they'll decide kind of like what to do from that step forward. I will keep you updated, but I don't necessarily have anything more than that at this exact moment, because I don't necessarily think that there was more than that offered, if you will. And then I'm trying to think what else. That actually might be all I have. The rest are my committee announcements. Did I miss anything? There wasn't really much, was there? No, I don't. It was like 6 weeks ago, so I'm like,
Those numbers were pretty staggering.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know if you.
No, I should have included that and stuff, but I forgot that I got that. No, the line became during the board meetings themselves that those numbers were not accurate. They're not accurately reflect, even before the board meeting, the faculty senate actually, and I can't remember if I included the faculty senate report in these materials or not. I don't think that I did. But the term Chancellor Dunn even spoke on that in faculty senate. The idea that those numbers weren't reasonable, that they obviously were not accurate.
I will say it was alarming because it had shown that we were down by like 2/3. So only had a third of the applicants this past year. So we were so crazy, creating this huge alarm, or something like that, right? Like 50% or something like that. So it's this huge, huge discrepancy in numbers, right? So it kind of created this instant panic for these emergency meetings. But then they realized that they switched over the application software inside, and that some of that wasn't coming through correctly, and that those numbers most likely were skewed, because those are very, very large degrees of discrepancies.
Yeah, and so that became a line that the software glitch was not counting some applications that they knew were submitted, but it just wasn't showing up in basically the export of the numbers. And since then, I got CC'd or forwarded the email that was the release out of the provost's office of the accurate terms to date at that point. I forgot that I got that email. So I will dig that up and share it. But basically, the updated email was saying that we're actually up. I mean, and up a little bit for grad applications, it means like 4 or 5. The percents are so small.
Yeah.
But
So we were up in both undergraduate and graduate.
that's what I remember, and I'll go dig up the email that I have from that release in my feed. I can't remember where I got that. It might not even be an email, maybe something that's in the faculty association.
And that's also based on the trajectory, so they do like a 38 weeks out, you know, so many weeks out, and then so they can get a trajectory of number of applicants and expectations when they finally have that final deadline or how you potentially be turned over from those numbers.
Sorry, should have.
That's okay. I mean, I had to duck out of that board meeting, so I didn't realize that was talked about, so thank you for updating me as well. Yeah.
I do think we should inquire about this update as you go along.
Yeah.
We are using.
Yeah.
As well as, I think you're right, I think the graph they did send out was giving us something about like 39 weeks out from when the semester starts. So they did something like 88 days before it was a large jump, but I think, some updates on the stuff.
And Dr. She did say he would start doing the updates more regularly. And that's, to be funny, I think part of the reason why we got these numbers is because I had literally just asked him, hey, can you like tell us the numbers of the next meeting? And then the next week, then they had this meeting like 2 weeks later. And I was like, oh, what just happened? Yeah, so I'm not sure, but it might have had something to do with that. So.
And if I may also speak to, like, because it did bring together people who usually aren't in the room together.
Yeah.
So it brought together those who are graduate directors of various schools and departments across campus to have conversations with the challenges they had faced in recruiting. So it actually did create, in a random way, even though maybe in a false scare, a dialogue that needed to happen. Yes?
I will point out that it also pointed out the massive disconnect between the higher ups and those who were in the room.
Yep, it sure did.
And the disconnect between, I think, graduate professional students and the senior faculty.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think
It highlighted other things that need to be addressed.
Hence why I said it's like a listening session.
Yes.
Because I feel like there was more of people being like, whoa, this is going on.
Yeah.
And then like people like kind of becoming more and more aware of what's happening across the campus.
Yes.
So it was interesting. I don't think that it was interesting. I don't think it served the purpose they actually meant, but I don't necessarily think that it didn't help along the way. Yeah. It just was interesting.
I like this PC term you keep on using.
Because you know what I mean. Interesting.
Interesting. It was very interesting.
So yeah, I think that's all I have because other stuff is committee meeting.
I'll jump in there just because it's pertinent for it. The notes on the faculty senate meeting where this came up was under questions. Because it wasn't part of the report. Graduate school applications down 50%. Dr. Carbondale responded, the data from Tableau, it's not getting counted right. And so there was a follow-up question. Basically, you're saying this is a software glitch. Yes. The aberration is so large. This is from Interim Chancellor Dunn. You know, that those numbers just can't be right. There was some concern as to whether all the applications are being processed, if they're not actually being counted. Dr. Carbondale reassured everyone that they were being counted, or they were being processed, and just weren't necessarily being counted accurately as far as that report goes. Was there a question as to whether that only affected the graduate school? Dr. Carbondale assured folks that yes, it only affected graduate school, and there was some form of an expression or explanation as to one of the graduate school staff was on medical leave, and that potentially being the cause of why the software wasn't transitioning the two different data sets together correctly, or something to that effect.
That's what I said. Researching the whole process.
Yeah, sorry.
It's already got it covered. It's happened. It's what happened.
Anything further?
No, the rest is my committee.
Go to the next item of business. Diane.
Sure. I'm just going to give you some numbers so you can keep in mind if you still haven't applied. So for event funding at this time, we have given 7 RSOs event funding that equals $7,000 or $7,075. Being about on average about $1,000 per RSO. We have at this time remaining $6,925. And so looking at trajectories of those who usually do submit requests For the spring, I'm predicting that we have anywhere from 3,500 to 5,000 bid requests still remaining. And as well as what we consider, in addition, not including what we might be considered for the International Student Council. So that would then put us right around where we will be depleted for event funding. But for those in this room who know that you have an event coming up and or have never applied or interested because you'd like, there's an event that you have in mind, please make sure that you're getting that to us. Because we certainly come on a first come, first serve, and so once we do run out of funding, unfortunately, we would have to either pull from other areas or just have to decline it at that time. If we do have any extra funding, though, it would certainly go towards supporting the SCARF event, our award ceremony, or other small mini conferences or lectures that we might hold as GPSC. In addition to that, as far as our travel funding, if you still have not submitted travel funding, I encourage you to do so, as well as to let your colleagues know. As a reminder, we will accept your application prior to us attending a conference. So if you know that you're going to be going to a conference in the spring and you've registered, you've made that financial commitment, please make sure to submit any, and if you're presenting that you've already been accepted to present, give us that paperwork so that we can go ahead and move forward with the processing of that for you. We do have quite a few pending, so the total that we technically have given out so far in the process is 9,525, which would then leave us 7,975 remaining. But in the pending slot, that is an additional 1,575 of those who understand the process this week, which means that we would have, after those in process, a total remaining balance of $6,400, which is plenty amount for the spring, but that surprisingly can go very fast. We tend to get a bulk of our applications in February and March, and then usually will not have much left in the budget as we approach April. So try to get those in early, even if you're attending something in May or later, to sort of register early so that we can apply for that early. And that means that we've actually had at this point about 80 applicants for our travel funding that have been processed and reviewed. And so we're definitely on trend for past years where we are in our travel funding budget. And then, what is it here? We do have some plans or some strategies also to kind of help support some of our awards. We are looking at promoting those awards, but also doing some additional fundraising, especially leading up to the Day of Giving. The Day of Giving will occur on March 4th. We will have a portal open with the Day of Giving that people can channel towards. That will go to those awards, but also additionally help support any of those other budget lines that we need to look at, which could be travel funding and or event funding. One thing I'm considering doing, but I would love your feedback or want to know a little bit more if you would be interested in this. One thing that kind of came to mind is last year we had a big desire to give more to our constituents, both our graduate and professional students, and potentially undergraduate students, or work collectively to create programming that would be helpful. And so I had thought about maybe hosting a small mini conference that would be provided by GPSC and anybody who else would provide. I've already secured a potential either someone who would host a very in-depth workshop and or be our keynote speaker, and he's a gentleman, his name is Kevin Purcell. He was he did organizational psychology for Microsoft, worked directly with Bill Gates and Miranda Gates, and looked at their teams and would say, okay, this is how you're going to make more money, this is how you're going to communicate more effectively. And so you literally be working with someone who literally worked beside Bill Gates and was in his ear of how to have more effective running a company based on organizational psychology. And I think that's something that can carry through RSOs here on this campus, and can certainly carry through in your everyday work life. But on top of that, then thinking about what other things we want to add to that day that would help you as students, both for undergraduate students, undergraduate students, professional students, whoever it might be more successful in their ongoing careers.
This is something that we have talked about. I guess it started actually over break, but just last week we talked some more in depth on it. And in addition to the programs that we run, our normal funding programs, our award programs, and all the collaborations that we do through the graduate school affairs area. Another thing that we like to do is a big event, if we can. can, that gives us a profile, gives us exposure, sort of like a very nice sort of showcase or spotlight type of event. And in our conversations, this one seems like really primed to be that event. It has a lot of opportunity, it has a lot of value to add. I think you can present new opportunities that will be emergent from it. And so this is something that I've definitely thought is one we should support. We have some funds that we can actually use to support this itself.
But as I would just say that I think the timing of this will be based on that particular keynote speaker schedule. And so based on the schedule, we're looking potentially early March, or, you know, we're going to really push it potentially even like late February. But I'm looking at more of a March timeline, so that we can then like get other people on board. And so what I would probably need then is maybe a team or like outreach to say what else we want as far as the programming goes, and create kind of a small committee that kind of looks at that so that we execute everything appropriately for the day as far as, and more so for promotions and programming. All right, any questions before? I think that's pretty much it for me then. And then moving into just as a reminder, if you have a desire to serve on any of those committees that I talked about, our research committee, our teaching and work committee, feel free to also reach out to me.
Sort of just a conversation between us, but I think I guess the council's input actually makes sense on this. I think what might be a good idea is similar to what we did with Solutions Springfield last year. Put forward a resolution that authorizes funds not to exceed a certain amount, so that we have that on call ready to go.
Yeah, okay.
That event as it develops, because we won't necessarily have all that figured out beforehand, but if we authorize the funds not to exceed the amount, we have that as the budget. So getting a resolution drawn up for that, so that the next council can look at that, we can at least deliberate on it, and potentially pass a resolution of that kind. I think that would facilitate.
I love it.
And finalizes.
I don't actually think we did technically talk about that, but that is perfect. That is a great suggestion. I think in that too, I could also like move towards understanding where our foundational collaborations might be, so that we can have a joint resolution if needed.
Yeah, no, I didn't think that we were talking about last week, but that puts the council in its stake, finds our contribution.
Sure, I love it. Sounds great.
Yeah, you should definitely see control over the project team, all that, yeah.
I like it.
Cool. Anything further? Any questions, discussion, additional items?
Yep, that should be, I think I covered everything.
All right, seeing none. To my report. So I submitted the report that I drew up for tonight's meeting. But I have it in mind. So one of the first things I'll cover is, we already talked a little bit about the Board of Trustees meetings that occurred on December 4th, December 5th. One of the big ones was that the board did approve the appointment of Daniel Mahoney. Dr. Mahoney was the new system president for SIU. He is due now to begin March 1st of this year. That was one of the big actions that came out of that board meeting itself. The chair of our board of trustees, Judge Gilbert, described Mahoney as a proven leader, problem solver. He's been described as a visionary. Dr. Mahoney was the overwhelming preferred choice of the search committee itself. The search advisory committee, the search committee that we're talking about there. Dr. Mahoney says, and there is a series of news articles that are all based in that report, which is basically what I'm reading from here. This one is coming from the SIU press release. Dr. Mahoney says, I'm excited about working across the system to advance all of SIU. The levels of commitment to the system's success and to the welfare of its campuses is clearly strong. From the board of trustees, the faculty and staff, the community members, alumni, and donors. SIU has a powerful impact on students in the SIU region, and I look forward to building strong foundation. In the general sense that I got from some of the conversations that I had, the media that I've read, my participation on the search advisory committee was that President Mahoney is really excited to come to the campus. He's really excited about the opportunity of leading the system with multiple campuses, multiple institutions, that kind of role within Southern Illinois. The plan that he has is when he comes, he's going to initially spend sort of like 6 months down in Carbondale at this campus, learning about our campus and its role within the system. Then he's going to spend 6 months living in Edwardsville on their campus, learning the same things, their campus, their role within the system, and then go on to Springfield, where the intention is for him to actually live in Springfield, run the system office out of Springfield, where there's a general consensus among the board members as well as other system and campus officers. The idea that that makes sense for the system president. Primarily, their role is working with the legislature and all of the various committees and bureaucrats that have a lot of influence over what happens to the system, as well as all of its entities and campuses and so forth. So that's sort of the plan going forward. Everyone is definitely really excited. There was just some crazy interesting press on Dr. Mahoney. I think I included one, or maybe I didn't include that one. But you can even go and look at local news from Winthrop, where Winthrop University is, which is in one of the Carolinas. I can't remember. South Carolina. If you look at some of the local news, it's nuts. They did like goodbye type of events and things, and like they made a little documentary actually about him leaving. And I was talking with Trustee Gilbert, Jerry Gilbert, about it, that you don't often see people that are not only like sad to see him go, but then also happy and excited for him to go because they know he's moving on to something better. And it's like you usually see one or the other. You don't necessarily see both at the same time. It's like for someone to get that as the reaction from the persons in the institution they were leading before at the same time, it's just like that actually speaks a lot about that individual and who they are and their ability to get things done and how they do it in particular. The idea that they're both sad to see them go, but then at the same time excited for them and new opportunities. It's pretty interesting. So hopefully great things to come. March 1st, there's the possibility that we could maybe invite him to come by a council. We could actually get that introduction, because he will be down here for those first 6 months. It's something we could also do joint with USG. I imagine that might be more accommodating to schedule. That's something the council would like. I think that's definitely something that would make sense. Something else that was also suggested is that we could write essentially like a letter welcoming them to the campus, type of a thing. And I think that's something that is a good idea as well. Just basically puts us in the conversation, makes us know someone. So that's something else that we can do as far as that appointment goes. Yeah.
Can I motion to write a letter of welcome to the new SAE system president?
Okay. Motion. Second. Is there any discussion on that? I'm sorry?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. There's no discussion. We can move to a vote. Seeing none opposed. All those in favor of writing a letter of welcome to the new system president, Dr. Mahoney, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Seeing none opposed, motion passes.
Should we make an official motion for the invitation?
I will bring that as follow-up business.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Going on from there, there is a new executive director of the Alumni Association. Just procedurally, I wanted to include that. One is great. It's Director Lee. Is the new director. We've had such a good relationship with the Alumni Association for the last couple of years with their support that definitely will be reaching out. And I have in some other meeting notes that Director Glean is actually most interested in basically relationship building and collaboration, which is really exciting to hear, because that has been one of the things that I've tried to really hammer home on. It's just like we have a lot to gain by collaborating and finding those shared goals or shared interests with other entities. So interested to see where Director Lee will be on that. Let's see, going through the rest of the report. Some highlighted parts. I don't know if you saw the news. I included a link to the Daily Egyptian's story on this, but the university has ended the mandatory requirement for one to submit either the SAT or the ACT score for undergraduate admissions. So long as your GPA is above, I can't remember the exact 275, you do not have to submit an SAT or ACT. If it's below 275, you do have to submit, and then there is still a minimum score that is required. Oh, it's in the report right under it. It's literally looking at 275. However, as I mentioned under where I mentioned the GPA, there's no word on the GRE and how potentially something analogous to that in graduate school. Other things like TOEFL scores, which actually did come up 2 years ago, I think, when I was on an Ed Policies Committee. We briefly talked about scores. Actually, we did change some of the policy on that. But yeah, no word on GRE. It'll be interested to see if that's something that comes up for grad council. It probably will. I don't know if they're going anywhere, but
I know from my position, I know I didn't have to do a GRE or anything. I know that's part of some of the programs already.
Are you talking about grad school dropping their GRE?
Well, I know some departments have slipped it, none. It's as far as like campus-wide, like.
It's a similar thing, though. It's like if you have X on your grade on average.
I was gonna say, where else do you go? I wouldn't be in law school if they were like,
Take
use
the
your
GRE.
GPA, not your LSAT score, because my LSAT's a pure GPA down there. That happens. They're adding the GRE to law schools too, like some law schools are taking the GRE instead of it. But, yeah.
curious.
Everyone's got their little combos.
But yeah, that is to your point. It may be something that the grad school is not really necessarily affected by because they already defer to programs where there isn't a grad school. Because admittance for graduate programming is a
Also,
little
if you're an
different.
SAU alumni, they just kind
Because they're like,
of. Yeah, you want to keep paying the money.
Like, that's come back, right?
That works at the system level as well. Like I hired my master's and bachelor's in Edwardsville, and it was sort of the idea is like, well, if you want to go get your PhD, you just sort of like are able to go in there so long as you have good grades, it's like good letters from here.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with grad council. But that has changed. That's a really great thing. Insofar, I hear the reoccurring phrase of talking about positive things. That is something that is positive to talk about. That does actually go under recognized. Granted, this is a new one, but along with the idea that any person that is a domestic resident of the United States that will pay in-state tuition rate for undergraduate studies, and then now also the idea that it is not required someone with a GPA of 275 and all the course requirements to submit a SAT or ACT score. That is actually something that's some plus column items for undergraduate studies here to not lose sight of. Moving on now, under GPSC affairs, just some announcements and bulletins. We already talked about awards programs, applications, nominations will be opening up. You can tell I started writing this in December because it's next semester. The Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Provost, Dr. Komaraju, has requested the GPSC as well as USG, the same request was extended to them, that we explore some options for something like a campus conversations forum, town hall with students and administration. My sense of the purpose from the conversation that I had with Dr. Komaraju is that it's on improving communication between the central administration and students, as well as just getting a better shared understanding of where each is coming from or what's going on, whether that's related to things like academic reorganization, or whether that's about things that are very unique, particular to a particular program. For instance, right before we went on break, transportation school, aviation and automotive had a series of meetings with the provost's office over some issues, as well as they spoke at the board of trustees meeting in force. There were many of them there. So made that request. We talked about it, the officers and I, about how we might want to approach that, because a number of things have occurred to me and how we might do that. Whether it is something that's just sort of like an open campus type of meeting, or whether we try to have targeted meetings more towards like colleges or particular program areas or particular types of issues or questions or problems or what have you. And so the sort of frame for how those meetings occur is sort of the biggest one that I have. Insofar as we have, through the leadership of Trustee Lockett, had campus conversations, we know we can successfully have sort of forum or a conversation or a town hall type of format, panel type of format to talk about issues. We know that we can get that done, but sort of that frame and then like who are the persons in the room and why, and that I've thought the most about. Up to and including that when we submit a proposal on what we think would work best, that we could even say here's sort of like let's do this with an actual timeline so that there is a schedule or an itinerary of okay, here's the first meeting, but then there's like here are these other ones, these are how they're formatted, like this is what the purpose of each meeting is, that it's something maybe more specific than just a generic meeting, or maybe it's better. So I thought that I would bring that before the council as part of my report, see if there was any initial recommendations, or at least bring that up as something for folks to consider as we get back to follow up on that request. Going forward from that report, so item 2 under that, actually, university committees, under GPSC affairs. Yeah, I actually didn't get that done today. That was my afternoon, but the errands that I ran long. So I didn't actually get that. I will have the updated committee list, any of the issues or changes that happened with that committee list, because a number of those actually ended up not either being active right now, or we no longer have nominating privileges to that committee on a number of those, and it's taken a little bit of running down to get figured out. I haven't finished the actual sheet. But if you have questions about that, if you haven't heard from a committee, or if you have heard or anything committee related for university committee appointments, definitely ask that question if you haven't. But I'll have for February 4th that finalized sheet and the updates on where all that landed. Constitutional Committee, quick overview of that. Winter break, we went into winter break with the initiative to begin working on the Constitution and focusing a lot on governing structure, the roles and the powers. In particular, one of the ones we were focusing on a lot, besides a limitation of the current Constitution, is that it doesn't really define the powers of the council very well, or council committees and boards. And so really building that out as a part, so that is added to our Constitution in addition to what has been defined for the powers and the duties of officers in the Constitution that exists now. So essentially adding a new article that addresses the committees and the boards in addition to the officers, as well as I guess a new article for the actual powers, duties, and roles of council itself. Because as we sort of looked it over, we realized we don't actually have an article that really provides the definition of all those things for the council itself, which is and so completed draft for review. February 25th is a potential target to get that to the executive committee in a final format. Hopefully they'll see some things prior to that being sort of completed final draft, with the intention of hopefully we can get a first read or a first presentation of the provisions and amendments to the Constitution for March 3rd. The bylaws timeline will be a little bit different, but hopefully still a completion for presentation and read at council in March. Policy documents are going to be something that will be a continuing conversation. It's undetermined right now with the executive board and council. I talked with Diana and Lindy about this last week, where realistically the policies are going to be a document that its purpose is specific to the entity that is basically the instructions, the guide or framework for that committee or that officer's office and boards that we have. So it's more or less like operating instructions for that particular unit that is outlined in the Constitution, whose bylaws are written, and then now you have like the actual operating policies for how you go about doing that. But realistically, the committee probably wouldn't be able to write all of those, nor would it necessarily make sense for us to write all of those, but we will write in the bylaws of the Constitution the role and authority for those policies and their creation and basically provision. So I have to kind of figure that out. Where I've kind of gotten and reflecting on that is realizing that we wouldn't really have a finalized set of policies for every entity that necessarily is outlined in the Constitution and bylaws, but that's not necessarily problematic. But trying to then anticipate how we make sure that those policies then get created, even if it's a as they need sort of process. And so that is probably something that the Constitution Committee is going to more of its time on, is how we actually articulate the idea of, well, you know, these policies need to be established, and how then we do the follow-up and the oversight that they are established as they are established in the ways that they're needed. It's like a different thing. Yeah. It'll be
that should be next fall.
Yeah. I mean, we got to where we are by doing a resolution that required it to be done. So yeah, it's probably. So that's the big question mark on it. But hopefully a first read presentation for a first read March 3rd of the Constitution. Maybe the bylaws, but the bylaws likely coming after spring break in that last week of March. That's a lot of wonky stuff about the Constitution Committee. I'm skeptical that there are any questions on that. Moving forward, last piece of business on the report from my office, from the Office of the President. So, office and admin stuff. Thanksgiving break actually was able to get some of the like weird admin-y, like just bureaucratic stuff done. So I got the file cabinets and record organizing pretty well done of all these old papers. I found some old committee records that didn't know existed actually, including those that are quite pertinent for the Health Advisory Board. For the meetings that we had earlier this semester and some of the issues that were encountered. So I was pretty thrilled to find some committee reports that were hard copies in file cabinets that I didn't know existed. I don't think anyone knew that they existed necessarily, except for perhaps the authors from the years prior that they draw from. So working right now on a process to get those turned into digital files and incorporated better into the archive system that has been getting set up. Did not get the website, did not get the internet server stuff, or some quarterly reports. Winter break, did get some things done, but did not get a lot of things done. Those are itemized in the report itself. But things that are progressing as we speak, so to speak. Package for the outreach and membership. Working on some generic business cards for members of council, as well as some leave behinds for GPSC in general, through the print shop up on the 4th floor. Doing the follow-up on the Constituency Shared Governance Conference, as we already talked about. We are working on hiring an office assistant, perhaps a couple, potentially to help with getting those documents worked into the archive. Working on a student government leadership meeting with USG president and student trustee. Also, we had planned for early January, but we ended up not having that meeting with the graduate student leadership, with the GAU president and student trustee. So again, working to coordinate that. We had an officers meeting last week that was very productive. We went over a number of things, setting priorities, looking at our timeline, and getting things figured out for the spring. I think by and large, I'll leave it at that. I'll probably have a more coherent, more pointed discussion, if not just create a one sheet for you. But we did create sort of our short list of like, these are the priorities going into this spring. Here's, I think, the best way, the mechanism to do it, as well as just our general administrative oversight type ideas and then anticipate some of the other sort of short run things that might come up. Feeling good about spring. I think it's going to be very productive, high activity. Got money to boot. Oh, I meant to add that in too. I asked for a number of things on policy guidance things about the legalization of marijuana in the state of Illinois and its relation to education policies. I've been photographing all the stuff that they put on campus, which I'm happy that they've actually done it because, right, it's like even though the state of Illinois is legal, it's like when you get involved with universities, they have a relationship with the federal government, which obviously the federal government hasn't legalized anything, and then also the DOE policies that are going to have an impact on any number of different facets of your time at a university under the auspices of the DOE policy. It gets all kinds of weird. So they've had the things up all over now, which is great. They also had a forum in the fall. I don't know, I think I shared the flyer for that through Student Legal Services and Student Health Center. And now also Student Rights and Responsibilities is also putting up some of the flyers and things like that. If that's something that we think we could potentially ask for like another forum or anything about, or again, if there's a condensed one sheet or something, I'd be happy to reach out to try and make that happen. Because earlier, right, at least half of us in here said we were also teachers. Some capacity teachers supervising undergraduate students, which means we might end up being someone that's fielding a question from an undergraduate student on these very things, let alone our own personal interest or just any form of mentorship we might have. It's just like our knowledge on that actually matters in any number of ways. So if there are outstanding questions on that, outstanding interest or continuous interest in having additional guidance on that, just let me know. Happy to continue to follow up on that. Originally, they were planning to do anything, was my understanding, which may have just been at one level of the administration, but like student rights and responsibilities and student legal services were planning on doing what they've been doing all along, and they're just looking for understanding or awareness. Alright. Committee reports. Yeah, traffic and parking. We have this in written. Oh, yeah, I didn't know if you wanted me to bring it up again. We had it submitted as written in the email attachment again. But yeah, we had it on the agenda on 5th, I guess, of November. But I didn't know if we had anything else with that.
Well, I think just the biggest thing is there anything that as graduate students we would like to look at aside from getting blue stickers? Because I know that it's a big thing. That's something that I'm going to bring up in the next meeting is the possibility of graduate students being able to get either a red or a blue sticker. And there are different tiers of blue stickers that all have the same parking privileges. But there's one for faculty who do not make that much money.
I'm not sure if this is different, but I'm on the parking appeals board, so we can't really have a say, but we were talking our last meeting, and we were discussing, like, at the law school, there's all those old buildings, and so we basically have to go all the way around to get to our building, but there's no traffic, so there's a one-way if you've been over there.
Yeah.
So it's really out of the way, so we've talked about, like, opening that up, if that's a possibility in the future. Not necessarily in my lifetime. It's just really inconvenient for this whole
Because it's like,
and even for, we talked about like visitors, not even just for us, like if you're going to look at the law school, you're like, wow, there's nothing going on at SIU, it's all these closed, boarded up buildings, so that's the only thought I had.
Yeah, so that's something that we looked at the previous meeting is like, what can be changed, what roads can be changed?
But there's plenty, like there's so much
Yeah.
room, and it's just, it takes so long, and it's so inconvenient, and people go down it the wrong way, and it's just like, it's causing more trouble than anything positive, so.
I
Sorry.
That's a really good
That's
point,
actually
yeah.
super good.
Especially if it's so inconvenient for the students too.
Right.
Yeah.
And I live like the other road, so I'm like, that'd be so nice if I could just cut it. I go there, like, this is-
Same, I get so mad, I'm like, I gotta go back. Especially because they lose stuff from us, but like,
I'll bring that, because
Okay,
that's what
that's
they're.
like-
One behind you as well.
So there's a parking lot over by Life Sciences 3, it was recently changed. It used to be the first 4 rows were red sticker parking. They've since, over this last year, put up these flimsy little rubber things that I drove over every single day because I got to leave and I don't care. But they have these things that they block up now, they've reduced it to 1 row. I just want to know why, because that faculty lot has never once been full, as far as I've seen in my time here.
Right.
And that reduces parking, that a lot of grad students who get their early work in those labs right there tend to use a lot. It just seems odd. So I was wondering if that could be reverted. So I'm sure that's.
And then did they change that at the same time that the one across the street turned to all green?
It turned to half green and half red, which again is like there's just not the undergraduate student body to be using that lot is green, so it takes away parking that's closer to those buildings.
I do know that they are looking at the one that's half red and half green now to see if there can be adjusted. And then I will ask about why the roads were lost there. Because I used to park there too, a long time ago.
If nothing else, they should like extend it to where that red parking lot is the first 2 sections of road. So.
Any more concerns about parking or traffic on campus? Well, cost because that is something that we're actually looking at. But I think they've been looking at it for years and they're still keep increasing it. Not much, but they're just going up a little bit at a time. But I think it's 145 for the red. Yeah, okay. All right. But I think that if we were able to get grad students blue ones for slightly more than the red, they would lower the red ones for the undergraduates. I would assume that that's something that we're talking about. But I do know that they know that the cost is excessive across the country for parking decals, and I think they're considering not raising them. I know they haven't been raising as much as they want. Any more comments?
Also schedule, talk about Center parking at St. Morris Library. There are like the 2 spots, one of them is for students and the other one is for faculty. Usually when I'm visiting parking in any university, I see like the closest parkings are for students. The second one, which is a little bit far for faculty, and then like the furthest is usually in my mind is for the staff. And that's basically on time wise. So students come like maybe for a class of 1-2 hours and then they move. There is like a dynamic of movement and motion on those like parking. But the faculty will be on campus like for a number of hours, like 3, 4, sometimes 4 hours. And staff mostly they're on campus for most of the day, like 8 hours. And that's why when I visit the parking, I don't know if that's like anything that they will be in the discussion. But specifically, I mean, in Morris Library, if you had in a way bringing that conversation, if you have all of those 2 spots of parking for students, that would help. Because people mostly would come for library and they don't get a spot to park, and it's only like, what does it like 40 cars, and many people come for this library. Library is one of the places many people visit and need to be maybe is that other spot that which is I don't think that we like change for students.
Right now, lower there, the left side. And one area that I did bring up, because previously I talked to graduate assistants and students in the art and design department, is the parking lots by Anthony Hall and right there at the Student Services Building, possibly changing those to red. Because graduate students that work in Allen have to bring all of their equipment and all of their art and stuff a really long way, because drawing and painting. So they're checking that out to see if it could possibly change. Do you have any more comments for traffic? I still don't have a date for the next meeting, but as soon as I get that, I'll try and get an agenda put forward for us to bring our concerns.
Next item, I give you 2 reports from the campus-wide assessment committee. With those, I will leave those as written unless there's any questions. There were primarily just some sort of like housekeeping and very business oriented to the committee itself. We use it as a work group sometimes to actually get things done. The big item coming out of the campus-wide assessment committee is obviously the upcoming Higher Learning Commission reaccreditation site visit, which is February 16th through the 18th. So that's sort of the big matter that is before that committee. We'll be participating with that. I've given you reports on that for a number of times. I believe we still have the links in my report on HLC. Yeah, we still have the matters on HLC in the report. As far as the assurance argument that is open for review until late December. There still is a third-party comment that has that link in there, and the survey has since closed the students itself. There will be some opportunities for, I believe, students forum or something during the visit itself. To learn more about the specific details of the site visit, I will share those as best as I can with our listserv. As well as through our social media or wherever it allows. I believe also at least myself, if not all of our officers, will meet with someone from the team that comes and does the visit itself. So if there's anything that you have for us to share as a part of that, please feel free to communicate that with us. Ask those in your area, your department, your school, your program. Communicate that back to us. That was really all I had from campus-wide assessment. Something that I did include with one of the reports in the first one was that conference that the office as well as sort of the committee holds every year. Do take a look at that. If for nothing else, I thought that might interest some folks. Is it the student learning workshop? I saw some of us actually participated in that. That's an area that there's been some interest in growing and getting more persons to participate in it. I think going forward, that's actually another area that GPSC could get more involved in helping coordinate, collaborate, and develop that event. Particularly since there's an interest in growing its participation, increasing the value that it can have for students. So I included that one in there for you to look at. There's nothing else on that? Questions? All right, next report, Diversity Council.
So we had a Diversity Council meeting today, and a couple of things are gone over. One is that there is a faculty staff survey, climate type survey going out that is regarding equity, inclusion, diversity. That's going to go out January 27th through February 14th. There's a ton of incentives for the faculty and staff to complete it, including the first 300 get $10 on their debit dog, and then there's a random draw of everyone who's done it, and 14 people will get 6-month memberships to the rec. So for your faculty and staff, let them know there's great incentives to do this campus survey. Also during the HLC visit, there will be a meeting that is specifically about the campus diversity plan, which will include people from Diversity Council, as well as other people shoulder tapped on campus. So there will be representatives from us in that meeting. And then the last thing is that April 20th through April 25th is going to be a diversity week, which the council is planning. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes on my phone. It's totally rude. And there's a variety of things happening, anywhere from like training sessions to a symposium from one of the higher ed classes. There's also going to be a session, hopefully it's currently in the works, of all of kind of like the upper admin, so like provost, maybe interim chancellor at that time and president, about kind of talking about where the campus is at in regards to equity and inclusion kind of initiatives and like what they're doing now. And so there's a couple of different things happening, and one of them specifically too that I think I mentioned here before is that in cooperation with the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research, we're collaborating on the Student Creative Activities and Research Forum, or SCARF, to include a component of research that's equity and inclusion related. So that includes really any research that's about any kind of like identity topics or things that are contributing to your field that are definitely about like raising awareness about equity and inclusion somehow. And those will be featured there, and then also included in the potential awards that are already awarded for that research there. So I just want you to be aware of that as a side note. And more details will come. We're going to work on advertising, and that stuff should come out in the next like month. So you'll get more details about that. That's Diversity Council. Any questions about Diversity Council? Okay. Also, it's not on the agenda, but I was going to share about the Chancellor Search Advisory Committee. So on February 12th, the committee will convene to review the materials of the candidates. So whomever is presented by Woodkeeper, but also we can review any additional materials of candidates who have been submitted. And then the last week of February, we'll be doing screening interviews. So we'll actually be interviewing the candidates that we select from that February 12th meeting. And then we'll be on track to bring candidates to campus in March. So that is the current plan, and we're on track, and those things are all scheduled. So we should be good to go. And that is where we are for the Chancellor Search Advisory Committee. Any questions about that? Yeah.
So far, it's one of us possible answers for sure. I mean, do we have a good number of candidates for that position, or it seems like a case of political what's going so with promise things, or I mean?
I don't have specific numbers at the time, and actually they don't normally let us share specific numbers, but I don't have those anyways right now, because until we meet on the day that they present the candidates, we actually don't know the final numbers in the committee. So I won't know if there's 10 candidates or 30 candidates until we meet that day, because then they present the best candidates of all the candidates and then give you all the information about that. So I can't even tell you now. I do know that we extended it an extra, I want to say 2 weeks from the original deadline. I think it's about 2 weeks to encourage additional candidates, simply because the original deadline was around the holidays and they felt like people needed more time, and so they extended it. So that hopefully also got some additional candidates, but I don't know the specific numbers at this time. Thank you. Any other questions? Can I make a quick order just in case I'm already talking?
Yeah, I only had one thing to add as far as the but I didn't include the faculty senate report, and I didn't include board of trustees reports. I have those written, and I can just email them out if that pleases council. Interested in that? I'll just do that. And I'll add it on there. Good in the order then.
Okay.
We have a ton of announcements. Yeah.
Well, I have two. One is very specific. If the grad council reps, if you could stay with us a couple minutes at the end of the meeting, that would be great. Just have a quick thing to tell you. And then you probably all received this. This is actually the other assistantship I hold. So this is from the Office of the Associate Chancellor for Diversity. These are all the workshop trainings that are happening this semester. There's a crap ton, because we're trying to make sure that like we cover all different time slots and all different topics. But But if you feel like there's something missing, these are kind of like the special topics that have been of interest as of last semester. But if you feel like we're missing anything, let us know, because we can still create more and advertise those as well. In addition, any of these trainings can be requested at special specific times. So if you have like a department that wants to do them, or like an RSO or things like that, like we are doing those as well. Like we already have like 4 of those trainings, like 4 of those very specific like trainings set up for the next month. So we can do really anything, but this is just more specific than last semester when we kind of had like maybe just a handful of things, but now we're able to present more. So just as a heads up. And just let me know if you have questions. Those are my 2 minutes of order. Okay, grab council reps 1 second.
You received some announcements as part of the email for the meeting. The diversity trainings was not included in that, but I have that file now and I can do that as a follow-up. But you should have received the flyer from the graduate school on fellowships and their submission dates. So make sure to look at that if you're interested in things like the Dissertation Research Award. I also received a new flyer, and I think I printed them out for the student trustee process for petitions to be a candidate, the candidate timeline in the elections. I made copies, those are over there, right? And I have a digital copy of that now too that I can share. You also have the Center for Teaching Excellence. They had some workshops January 15th, that was what, last week, a week ago, tomorrow. There's also workshops on the 23rd. Yeah, January 23rd. That's this week Thursday, right? Yeah, so this week Thursday. That was in the email, if I'm not mistaken. Another one that is a timely, is the deadline for the 3-minute thesis competition on our campus is this Friday. That was in the combined file, it's the first page. So the grad school, Office of Vice Chancellor for Research, Provost Office, are hosting a competition of 3-minute thesis competition. They also have the, is this the conference? Yeah, conference for diversifying faculty in Illinois that was included in that combined file. A couple of sheets on that, and if you're interested in applying to that or attending it, I have an additional folder for it, and then a call for submissions to no poetry. In addition to that, I brought along some that weren't a part of the email, the professional development series for this spring that the graduate school is hosting. They've got some workshops on submitting thesis, dissertation. The date isn't accurate any longer, but for the Student Creative Activities and Research Forum in April, final exam events. But some of those are over there as well. Also, if you remember from November, there was the flyer and notice for nominating or applying to be an orientation leader. The deadline for that is this Friday. I can follow up with that sheet again, but if you know anyone that is interested in or you want to recommend as an orientation leader for incoming undergraduate students, go ahead and follow through on that nomination process through new student programs out of the student affairs area. And I think
That was all the
You said that's only undergrads, nominations for undergrads, right?
I think it's only undergrads, but I'm not entirely sure. There might be orientation leaders for grad, but yeah. I know new student programs mostly focuses on undergraduate new students, and I think the orientation leaders do their program. Something I can follow up with.
I have just one more bit of the order. As you remember, during our health, the health meeting that we had about insurance, that in the spring you have to re-opt in. So don't let that window of time pass you by. That would create a delay in potentially getting medical services. So remember that every semester you have to opt in because they don't know whether or not you've got other insurance or whatever it might be. So if you haven't done that yet, make sure that you're going and remind people to do that.
I think I hit all of our announcements, but I don't know, there were a lot of sheets at the end. Okay. No further announcements?
Oh, and don't forget to sign in on your way out, and also grab extra pizza on your way out if you're hungry.
Our next meeting is February 4th. I believe that's 2 weeks from now. Nothing further. I would say motion to adjourn.
Motion.
A motion is seconded. Second. All those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
I would never. Yeah. Yeah, just one, it's just one and done.
There.